Welcome back. All right, so it has been revealed that Shea Weber. So Shea Weber had this, incredible run with Montreal to the Stanley Cup Finals, right? And after the Stanley Cup Finals was over and the Tampa Bay Lightning were celebrating, Montreal players seemed to go out of their way to console Shea Weber. Now, at the time, you can look at that and go, man, Shea Weber's had this nice long career, and this might have been his one chance at a cup. Totally understand players going to him. Now there's another layer added to that. That may very well have been part of what it was. But now it's been revealed that Shea Weber, due to foot and ankle issues he's had for a while, may not only not play next season, but he may never play again. And we never know when this is going to happen. With Marian Hossa, it was out of nowhere. With Henrik Zetterberg, it seemed like it was out of nowhere. So it looks like Shea Weber, $7.857 million approximately, in terms of his cap hit, becomes LTIR until 2026. So a Montreal Canadiens team that looked like maybe they might have to fill a couple of spots on the blue line, nothing major. Now they have to fill something major. He's a right-handed defenseman, or right-side defenseman, I should say, plays on the right-hand side. Because you don't always have guys playing on what would be their natural side. Sometimes defensemen that should be on the left or on the right and vice versa, right? Now, this does change their protection list, doesn't it? So Petrie, Sherratt, and Edmondson, I would think now are their protected list. Because with Weber, if he's going to be on the LTIR next season and beyond, you don't have to protect him. It really, there's no reason to have to protect him. Now, before somebody goes on an LTIR like that, the NHL will check things out and make sure it's all, not untoward, especially when it's career ending. So sort of like they did with Marian Hossa, where they checked, is it all right? Because at the time, of course, Chicago having cap problems of their own, and, Hossa is now injured. Well, that seemed to be kind of convenient to some, right? In the case of Weber, this is not a convenient thing for Montreal at all, right? It's going to be really hard to replace what Shea Weber does on the ice. Now, Merrill and Gustafsson likely exit as UFAs. So what you got Petrie, Sherratt, Edmondson, Romanov, and Norlinder are the most likely to step into prominent roles. Norlinder, of course, signing his entry-level contract recently. And so one or the other or both could end up in that top six. Now, $22+ million in cap space, by my calculations on Cap Friendly, is what they're going to have. So over $22 million for Montreal to kind of remake things. Now, they do have some UFAs they may want to keep. Corey Perry's already said he's willing to come back, probably play for cheap again, to stay in Montreal and try to finish this. So I would think he sticks around probably for less than $1 million, right? Armia, I think they try to do whatever they can to keep Armia. The problem is he may want more ice time somewhere else than he's going to get in Montreal. Stahl's not committed to whether or not he's coming back next year and what his plan is. And then you've got Tatar. Tatar's not coming back to Montreal. That ship has sailed. It has gone over the horizon. It is finished. And then the restricted free agents, you have Kotkaniemi, probably a bridge deal for Kotkaniemi, right? And then you have Lehkonen. And Lehkonen, again, probably a bridge deal. So they have a lot of money to play with here, but they have a pretty large void to fill. I honestly think they might be able to pull off a couple of major moves on this blue line. So I went through, again through Cap Friendly, went through who are the highest scoring defensemen who are free agents. You have Tyson Berry, 56 games, 8 goals, 40 assists, 48 points. And I know people are going to say he got that playing with McDavid and playing with Draisaitl. You're not wrong, but Tyson Berry can also be a very good offensive defenseman. And if he's not looking to cash in, Montreal could do worse. If you have Petrie, Sherratt, Edmondson, Berry, you've got the start of a pretty... But not just Berry. You can't bring in Berry. Berry will not replace Shea Weber. Don't for a moment think that I'm suggesting that can work. Dougie Hamilton, of course, is now the coveted free agent. In 55 games, 10 goals, 32 assists, 42 points. I do have some concern that people may overrate Dougie Hamilton at this point in his career, which is ironic because when he was in Boston, I thought he was underrated. So I think that's a pendulum that can swing back and forth. But if they were able to somehow finagle both, and that would really kind of be the ultimate, and you want to see Bergevin get praised and a lot of back patting going on. A lot of people be patting him on the back pretty quick if he got Berry and Hamilton, right? So Hamilton would be in your top two. Berry would probably be on that second pair. They're both right side defensemen. Not too shabby. Then you have Mike Riley. He's played in Montreal before. 55 games, just had the 27 assists. So the points are there, the goals aren't. I don't think you necessarily worry about that too much. So could they bring back Riley? Maybe you get Hamilton and you add Riley to the mix. You can have a good, solid, deep blue line for Montreal. You can turn the Weber injury, the Weber season, like potentially career-threatening injury, right, into something positive for the team going into next season, and maybe things get better. Because, again, they have a lot of cap space. They even had the cap space even with Weber if he was still playing next year, right? Alex Goligoski, he's older, not as effective as he once was, but he can play both sides, right? 56 games, 3 goals, 19 assists, 22 points. He can still produce points, again, as long as you don't overplay him. And this is the argument I always have, that people will say, well, if you look at these charts, advanced stats will say this guy's poor, or advanced stats will say this guy's great. And the question I always ask is one of, are they being overused? Are they being underutilized? Or are they playing sheltered minutes? There are a lot of different questions I'll ask. And in the case of Goligoski, I do think he was probably overplayed a bit by Arizona this year, right? And in Arizona, there were a lot of bad seasons to go around. So Goligoski could absolutely use a change of scenery. Again, he's in his mid-30s. You're knowing what you're going to get with him. Might be a good third-pairing guy for Montreal to get. And then, fascinatingly enough, there's Ryan Suter. Now, Ryan Suter plays on the left side. So that's the other side, right? 56 games, 3 goals, 16 assists, 19 points. It would not be the first time that Weber has taken the place, or that Suter has taken the place of Weber. Actually, Suter moved on from Weber. Let me do this. When Suter moved on to Minnesota, there were questions about whether or not Suter could play well without Weber. That maybe Weber was helping Suter out, they were paired together, and Suter proved himself. This would be a chance for him to prove himself, this time in the place of Shea Weber. And this would be a chance for him to prove Minnesota made a mistake in letting him go. Ryan Suter, I think, will be very motivated. He also is in his mid-30s, 36 years of age. You're not going to get the Ryan Suter who signed that massive contract in Minnesota 9 years ago, but you're still getting a pretty reliable defenseman, right? Now, Seth Jones is the name that's out there. And, of course, again, coming back to analytics, I didn't think Seth Jones had as good a year this year as he had the previous seasons. And I know the analytic community, not generally very high on Seth Jones and believing him to be overrated. Now, with Seth Jones, he's a right side defenseman. Thus, the reason that fans might be like, hey, we're in the Seth Jones sweepstakes, and Montreal might be. $5.4 million is the cap hit, and that comes off the books next year. So 2022, he then becomes a UFA, and of course, a team's gonna want to sign him to a deal before they acquire him. You don't want to give up a bunch of assets for a guy you may not be able to keep. 56 games played this year, 5 goals, 23 assists, 28 points. He was also a minus 18. So whether you look at it from a statistical perspective, your traditional stats, or an analytical perspective, the advanced side of things, was not a great year for him. And so you can also come back to this and say he's 26. He was playing in Columbus. Columbus, it was kind of a disaster all year. And you could say, we'll take a mulligan on that. Which, again, people who have said he's not a very good defenseman for years would say, you can't give him the mulligan on this season because previous seasons he also had his issues from the advanced perspective. I will be very interested to see what Montreal does here. Because, again, there are a lot of interesting names out there. If you can get Berry to say, I will sign for, not too much money or too much term. I want to go somewhere where I feel like I have a chance to prove myself again, that I can score without McDavid and Draisaitl. Montreal could be a good landing spot. And remember, there's some good young offensive talent here in a guy like Caulfield, in Suzuki, Kotkaniemi potentially, as well as others. So Berry could put up some good numbers with Montreal, again, on the right contract. And if you had Berry and then one of the other names on the board, Montreal can revamp this blue line. That almost $8 million in cap space without Weber's contract there could make a huge difference. And they again, if they can maximize what they do with that cap space, and if it's handled properly by Marc Bergevin, Montreal could come out of this as a team actually looking a little bit better on the blue line, a little bit deeper, and we'll see what happens then with the forward group too. But it will be very interesting to see how Montreal plays things, because there's been a lot of talk about them being after Dougie Hamilton and being players for Seth Jones, and the question was, okay, so they're going to add him to this blue line, but now you would be replacing Shea Weber with one of these defensemen. So we'll see how things turn out. So the question I have to Habs fans or to fans in general is, how does Montreal handle this? Who does Montreal bring in? And how quickly do you think this takes place? Do you think they make a trade with Carolina for negotiating rights with Dougie Hamilton? We see very often teams making deals before free agency to get exclusive negotiating rights. Do we see that? Or if you're Montreal, do you make a phone call right now to Ron Francis and make some kind of an agreement? Because Ron Francis has a good idea who's going to be available and who he's going to take. And do you pre-make a deal with them of, okay, so if you take this guy, we will give you this asset or these two assets for that player. And does Seattle draft defensemen on the 21st, and then on that same day we hear that they've made a trade with Montreal? And that one of the defensemen they've picked up is on his way to Montreal. And interestingly enough, of course, this is where they have to draft 20 players who have contracts for next season. They can still get a UFA and trade him out. You pick up Dougie Hamilton because Carolina can't get a contract with them, and then you send him to Montreal, and Montreal has exclusive negotiating rights with him until the 28th. So it's going to be fascinating. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And one more question. Is Shea Weber a Hall of Famer? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below as always. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.